Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies, and it looked like North Carolina was messing around with the Demon Deacons there for a little bit. Wake couldn't miss in the second half. North Carolina was doing offensively, and I was getting a little. Not, I was concerned for the Tar Heels, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the way they started that game, it was weird. It was almost as if, because like obviously we've seen them even when they're playing at full energy, full effort, sometimes still not shoot well. Like that's
Yeah,
not, but they just looked kind of like flat and like just bored, maybe even isn't the right word, or just like almost annoyed. It's like me when I do the dishes or something. Like I'm not attacking it enthusiastically. I'll do it and do the best job that I can, but like I'm not exactly like attacking the task with enthusiasm. And that's kind of
yeah,
what
I
look it
got
looked
you.
like. Yeah, it was like that, and it was weird. It's like, why would you not come out with energy against anybody if you're this North Carolina team? And apparently, they got laid into at halftime, and certainly they
Mhm.
came out in the second half and played significantly better, at least in terms of their energy.
Well, one thing about the energy, and actually, I wanted to piggyback off of something you tweeted yesterday during the Duke loss to Pitt. I'm having a really hard time trying because I'm with you. I'm having a really hard time trying to piece together some connective tissue game to game as it relates to these teams. And remember when
No,
we thought Clemson was legit, and then Clemson gets crushed by Virginia, and did you see what Georgia Tech did to them?
it did.
So, yeah, I mean, like a lot of these things don't make a lot of sense, but it kind of hit me in that if I'm having a hard time watching these games with no fans, right?
Right.
And it's weird watching, like in tonight's broadcast on the ACC network, where one of the more interesting aspects of the game tonight was the fact that the analyst
Colors,
was
yeah.
having audio issues, and he sounded a
He
little bit
sounded
like
like
Darth
he
Vader.
was like in a submarine. It was weird. Or in his
And you said
bathtub.
bathtub. I know Josh
Yeah.
Graham over in the Triad was talking about it sounded like Darth Vader. I envision a bathtub. I hope he had like a glass of wine next to him, maybe some candles,
I
just
mean,
kind of
like,
some personal time
honestly,
while he was watching the game.
if that's the case, like that rules and good for him.
Good for you. Hey, we'll get to some meditation here in a little bit because it's something that Caleb Love talked about. But if I'm having a hard time getting into watching these basketball games, I can imagine it's like the players who are
Yeah.
used to playing a particular way, used to playing in particular environments, along with all the other crap of Roy Williams talked about it during his press availability last week or earlier this week. I think it was on the Monday Zoom call where he's like, if he goes over to talk to some people, the players worry like, oh, did something get canceled? Did something get postponed? So
Yeah.
I can see where energy level can differ from game to game, and I'm not going to hold it against any one particular team for not being locked in at any given time.
Well, and you even mentioned Clemson. Like, with the Virginia game, like I was gonna just throw that in the trash because they apparently they'd only practice like I think maybe once or twice with Brad Brownell, like
Right.
during their pause. Like it's just crazy to think. I mean, think about NC State, Carolina that we're presumably going to get on Saturday, and like State's been on this COVID pause for X amount of time. We have no idea how many guys they have practicing are healthy. We have no idea what's going on with them, and like people are going to draw these like sweeping conclusions based off of that game, and it just feels so
Yeah.
silly. And it's like
I can't do it.
every other day a program's going on pause seemingly, like, and you're right, I do think it sucks out a lot of the atmosphere more so in college basketball than in football because of how much we're used to fans being there and everything like that. And
Hmm.
it's, I mean, it's super weird to watch games at camera now. I don't like it. And like
No, I
it's
don't like it
just,
either.
and the fact that it somewhat kind of playing it out like we thought it would, in the sense that it was going to be more of a challenge with basketball because you get a couple cases in your tier one and you probably are going on a pause for some length of time. And basketball teams are, I think, a little, except for Florida State, which gained superpowers from their pause evidently, but like basketball teams are more dependent, I feel like, on that continuity. And like when you get your rhythm broken like that, sometimes even just one player going out for any length of time can mess with the team. And it's like, it just doesn't feel right to me on like a lot of levels. It just feels off and wrong and weird.
Well, specific to this game between North Carolina and Wake Forest, I think it was Daggum Box Scores, which is if you're a Carolina fan, you don't follow that
Yeah.
account. I highly recommend it. They have a lot of fun stats and gifs and everything else. But they pointed out at the end of this particular half, now Carolina's like minus 22 in first halves this season. and it just continues a pattern. That's one consistency out of this Tar Heels team. It doesn't matter if they're playing a good team somewhere in the Ken Pom top ranking, or they're playing the worst team in the ACC in Wake Forest. They just have a hard time getting consistent, getting something going in the first half. But in the second half, they eventually, I don't know if it's just another reminder from Roy Williams, maybe they finally get into whatever rhythm it is, they find something to get back into it. But the issue today for me watching North Carolina was defensively. I get that teams can get hot, and I get that fans are like, oh, what is it, Mucius, right? Mucius, he had, what, 4 3-pointers going into this game?
He was 4 of 24. So, I mean, I guess in a sense, I didn't know it was that bad. So, like, in a sense, I guess, like, I get if that's the scout on him to, like, let him shoot threes. I understand why it was.
Don't
right. Once you get in the rhythm.
Yeah, don't leave them all wide open. That's the thing. I mean, they were leaving Wake Forest completely wide open. The other thing that is problematic for North Carolina is that you can look at Ken Pom, you can watch most of their games, and they're a really good offensive rebounding team. I mean, how often do we sit here and talk about all the missed shots that they pull down, right? But in this game, Wake Forest out-rebounded them, which was not something that I was expecting in the contest. They were below their average rate in offensive rebounding. And then making matters even worse, which I think is a larger issue for this North Carolina team, you can pull down all your misses.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to put it back, what's the point? I think they only had 9 second chance points in this game, if I was looking at the stat broadcast right.
Yeah.
So that's a problem that makes these games closer than they need to be.
Yeah, I think that for that, at least in this game in particular, it felt like they were just missing so many shots around the rim. Both Garrison Brooks and Day'Ron Sharpe were just missing so many point-blank shots around the rim. And I think if there's a concern for North Carolina, it's weird, at least in terms of this game. And again, like you said, there's like, don't draw too big a conclusion for anything. But Armando Bacot has probably been their most consistent player all season long. He was great again tonight in this one. And now it's like freshman guards are coming around. They're getting together. They played well. Caleb Love has a career high 20 points. RJ Davis has 13. They both played well, had some silly mistakes, but like you can live with that. And now the big guys are kind of struggling. Day'Ron Sharpe had some not as good moments as you would have liked. And he was somebody that I think we all really liked watching earlier in the year. So like, yeah, I think it's like both a positive and a negative for UNC in the sense that like we know that Garrison Brooks and Day'Ron are better players than that. Mm-hmm. And so like if they can all do that at the same time, like they can probably look much better. They have scored 80 for 3 straight games now, which, you know, it doesn't always feel that way, but they've done it. And it didn't feel like they were going to after their first couple of ACC games. But like if they can do that, it's probably good. But then it's also a bad thing because you're like, well, wait, you guys were playing well earlier and now the guards are playing well and the bigs aren't playing well. So can you just get everybody to do the same time thing?
I'm looking forward to the story on how the Calm app turned North Carolina season around.
I mean, I know that friend of the Panic Room.
Do you use that app?
I do not use it. Friend of the Panic Room, Caroline Darney does use it, and she just started recently, and she really loves it, and that's why I added her when I saw what Caleb Love had to say about the Calm app. But yeah, apparently his mom suggested it to him, and he's been meditating here in the last week or so.
Hey,
it's working.
Whatever works.
Right.
Look, whatever works. Whatever it is you need to do to get into a rhythm, by all means. And you should always listen to your mother. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Always listen to your mother. And if the Calm app ends up being the difference maker, I'm really looking forward to, like, I don't know, your oral history on such a turnaround for North Carolina. I think to wrap on this conversation, I think North Carolina and Duke, having played tonight and last night, and you look at the rest of the ACC and all the things that we talked about earlier with, it's tough to draw conclusions with the way the season is playing out. I don't think it's at a turn, though, to say that we're experiencing a once-in-a-lifetime event here, where both Duke and North Carolina are just okay. I mean, when's the last time you can say that both the teams are just okay? There is not this talent gap between Duke and everybody else in terms of their recruiting class. That North Carolina, while they have a very talented front court, they're still dealing with the issues that you saw last year, just spread out over 2 freshmen. And maybe they'll get it, maybe they won't. And then Duke, I think they'll get it more often than not as the season goes forward. But there's been this question making the rounds that, hey, with these two teams ranked the top five, is it entirely possible that Duke and North Carolina don't make the NCAA tournament? I don't think that's the concern for North Carolina right now, because North Carolina at least has wins over teams that would help their strength of schedule. When you look
Yeah.
at Duke's schedule, though, that doesn't exist right now. Some of it is they got crushed by Big Ten teams. The other part of it is they had some of their non-conference games scrapped by their own. But if you look at the games they're going to play, it wasn't like those games were going to help them out in terms of strength of schedule. And then when you look at the ACC going forward, I'm not quite sure Duke is, again, talent-wise, and what we've seen, it's not like Duke is a surefire thing against Louisville on Saturday or when they take on Florida State, like those types of things.
Yeah, and you, like you said, it is a once in a lifetime year, and it is a weird year in that sense. And I got angry at somebody yesterday on Twitter because he was talking about Duke and like, oh, okay, he's probably going to have a sore back soon or whatever. And I was just like, you know what? Here's the thing, guys. Y'all can do the jokey jokes or whatever. We are playing in a global pandemic. If Duke decides not to play this year or anybody else, I don't care. Like, what? Great. And I understand, I really do. So it's not going to impact y'all's lives at all. And it's, again, it's avoiding playing basketball during a global pandemic in a season, by the way, that hasn't been going all that well. I'm sorry. It just hasn't, in terms of COVID, it just has not. So, I mean, Villanova just came back from a 27-day layoff.
I'm not quite there yet, but I think you and I are going to have a panic room here relatively soon, where we're going to have an honest conversation about these postponed games, whether or not they're going to be made up, and the decision that's going to have to be made related to the ACC tournament. They're going to play the ACC tournament. The question is, are they going to chance a situation where they wrap up a regular season that weekend, and they're looking at Tuesday tournament games, and all it takes is one team to not have their players, and what do you do on that Tuesday? Do you just automatically advance somebody through forfeit? I mean, again, these are things that I'm sure are being discussed, but we don't have any sort of clarity on it right now. But
I guess they're being discussed. It doesn't. I don't know that we should just do anything.
You're right. You're right. But I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt the powers that be. That's gonna wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. We'll see you this weekend with NC State and North Carolina theoretically playing. Maybe. Guess we'll find out on Saturday.
Probably. I guess. I mean, is anyone playing in PNC Arena in the next week or so? I mean, that wasn't in PNC Arena, but whatever.
Canes ain't playing until at least the 23rd, I think. But that's another story altogether. Listen to the Canes Corner podcast with Adam Gold. He'll tell you all about it.
Yes.
Synergy, Brownlow. Synergy. All right. We'll see you all on Saturday.